Hello everyone, it's Pixel again, and I am going to be doing another creepypasta review. Well, it's mostly a pokepasta, which this one's a bit of an oldie, but in my opinion, it's a goodie. But first and foremost, disclaimer, I own nothing. Everything belongs to the rightful owners, so please go and support them and be nice. And also warning that some viewers may find this a bit disturbing, so viewer discretion is advised, please. So yeah, pokepastas. Love them, hate them. But I gotta admit, they have some some rather interesting ideas about the world of Pokemon, which I myself am a fan of, guilty as charged. But yeah. And of course with that there's a lot of creepypastas, or in this case, pokepastas. This one is actually one of my personal favorites. It is Strangled Red. So yeah, Strangled Red. But yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. So the story starts off with the narrator telling us about hacked Pokemon games and how some of them are mediocre or bad, and some are actually interesting, like the one where you could get a ghost as a starter. And of course, there's also the old cliche of dying after playing the game, or the game talking to them, But, beggars can't be choosers. But, ironically, the story kinda starts off with that. With the narrator finding a copy of Pokemon Red in the trash. Only, it looks a little damaged, with the sticker being torn across the Charizard's throat. And once they boot it up, they see that it's actually a hack. Which at first they're a bit disappointed in, but it's free stuff, so yeah. So yeah, the narrator begins the game, and already doing, the whole tutorial thing with Professor Oak, they instead are just immediately put into the game with their player character named Steven, who at first the narrator thought it's Red, but it turns out, no, this is a completely different person. And yeah, he's basically kind of like the main focus here, and he also sees that he has a Charmander named Miki, which I won't lie, is a very adorable name. And yeah, the game seems relatively normal. So once they go downstairs, he sees another trainer whose name is Mike, which the narrator assumes to be the rival character, but apparently the bedroom upstairs had 2 beds. And realizing that Mike and Steven are actually brothers. So they get into a bit of an argument of which Pokemon is better, Squirtle or Charmander, and they get into the introduction battle, and Steven wins. So Steven heads out into Palatown, and the narrator checks out all of the houses, including Red's house. And yeah, it's revealed later that this particular game takes place a year before Red and Blue? Yeah, Blue grows up. Before they start their journeys. And apparently Steven also was someone who Red looked up to. Which, I actually think that's a nice little addition. And Steven is also seems to be in a relationship with Blue's older sister. And of course he gets the Pokédex from Professor Oak, and the narrator finds out that the story of this version of Pokemon Red is noticeably different, although the gameplay is still unchanged. And the narrator also takes notice how quickly Steven's fame is beginning to spread, as other characters, as NPCs would talk about like they know him. And one of the most prominent Pokemon that is used for every battle is, of course, Miki. And the narrator sees that she's a pretty powerful Pokemon. She even becomes a Charizard at level 25. But things start getting a bit weird once the narrator reaches Lavender Town. Since this is in the past, there's no Team Rocket invasion. And the narrator tries to get a Ghastly, but Steven apparently says that he doesn't have a reason to be here and won't go into the Pokemon Tower. But the narrator decides that since Miki can handle anything, he just goes along his way. Eventually, Steven makes it to defeats the Elite Four, but something else happens. Well, at first he then has to defeat Mike, his brother, first, and he wins, but once the screen then goes to white and there's no Hall of Fame or credits or anything. But once the game starts up again, they're back in the brothers' bedroom in Palatown, and they appear to be sitting at the computer having a conversation, and Steven says that he doesn't want to, and it's revealed that Mike just wants to borrow his Charizard for a second to finish the Pokedex, and it won't register unless she recognizes him as Master for just a second. But Steven protests against this. But Mike promises that he will give her back. I am so sorry, excuse me. I am so sorry about that. So, after trying to hit no, seeing that, but it'll just continue on loop if he keeps saying no, and eventually the narrator picks yes, and Steven proceeds to use the animation where people trade Pokemon appears, but as Miki is traveling down the trading tube, there's a loud snap. And it seemed to turn, well, at first it freezes the game, but once the narrator turns it back off and on again, he sees that the title no longer has a Charmander standing next to the trainer, and the new game option is absent, and the only option left is to continue. And so the narrator selects continue, and they are greeted with 1 year later. And they see Steven standing in the Pokemon Tower, standing in front of a tombstone. And Steven doesn't say anything at all, but once the narrator checks his Pokemon, he sees that Miki is gone. And not just her, but all of Steven's Pokemon as well, and so is the Pokedex. Steven basically has nothing. No badges, no money, nothing. And the narrator also notices that the trainer card picture looks different. Steven looks more depressed, like he looks mournful. So Steven proceeds to walk away from the tombstone, and the picture keeps getting worse each step the narrator takes when he's in control. But by the time Steven exits the tower, he's on his knees. And here the narrator begins to put some things together in his mind. Like, he always wondered why there was no champion in the original games besides your rival, and why it's the protagonist that has to beat your rival when there was no previous champion to challenge. And the narrator realizes that the previous champion gave up. And since Miki ended up dying, and along with her, a part of himself, and basically threw away all of his fame, his Pokedex, his badges, even his own Pokemon, he threw it all away in that year. But the game still keeps going, and the narrator has frankly no idea what else to do. But once they see that, talking to the people in town and seeing, and them trying to comfort Steven, it doesn't seem like there's much to do. So the narrator takes Steven into the tall grass, but every Pokemon just leaves him alone. They won't battle, they won't... nothing. And basically, the narrator becomes, well, frustrated with mixed with the depressing atmosphere, and none of the non-player characters wouldn't say anything except give them their condolences and offer lemonade or coffee, to which Steven replies with no. And then the narrator remembers Pallet Town. So he basically starts a very slow journey back to Pallet Town, to say the least. And the narrator tries talking to Professor Oak, and he says that these things happen and that Steven was just unlucky. And next is Blue's sister. She apparently says that doesn't want Steven to leave again. And Red's mother won't even talk to him at all. And once Steven gets inside his house from the beginning, he sees that Mike is there, and Mike apparently is presumably filled with regret over what happens, and he says, "I'm so sorry." And yeah, the narrator then wonders if this is really how this game ends, with Steven doomed to wander the place in misery, haunted by the memories and forced to listen to everyone's concerns about him. So, as a last-ditch effort to do anything, he makes Steven go to bed. And after a while, Steven gets up and says that he's going to do it. Which the narrator has no idea what he's talking about. But as soon as he leaves the house, Steven says that it can bring her back and it can do anything. And the narrator doesn't know what Steven is talking about, like, at all. So he tries going through some different paths, but Steven won't budge. So apparently Steven can swim because the narrator accidentally steps into the ocean. To which Steven finds what he says is the missing one. And the narrator at first denies this, saying that, but Steven is actually talking about the missing no. Which, I'll explain later what the missing no is. And Steven makes it to Cinnabar Island, and the narrator feels like something was off. More than it already was, since the Lavender Town theme stopped and there's no noise at all. Or any Pokemon. But once Steven makes it to the east, lo and behold, the missing no. And Steven doesn't really do anything to the missing no. He just commands that it joins him. Well, it actually becomes more of a possession, and it does. And it starts getting more and more disturbing. Sorry about that. As the narrator sees that missing no isn't in their party, but rather an item. And once he I am so sorry. Once he checks the trainer card again, Steven has his back to him. And he also remembers what Steven said at the start of the night. So he heads back to Lavender Town and notices that all of the trainers won't even look at Steven, and they're turning their backs to him when he passes. And once he makes Steven talk to one of the officers, he tells him, just go. And one of them says something else, saying that sometimes dead is best. And the narrator, sorry, I am bad with words today, realizes what Steven is going to try to do. Something that is rather seen as a crime against nature. Oh boy. So they make it to the Pokemon Tower, and the narrator becomes hesitant with using the missing no to bring back Miki. But Professor Oak, similar to how when you try using a bike in a building and Professor Oak magically tells you can't use that item there, he basically tells Steven not to use it. But Steven isn't having any of it, since he says, in a world that cheated me, why should I play fair? And Steven then uses it. And then, after some silence, Steven obtains something. To which the narrator doesn't know, can't tell, because the game ends up taking away their control. And Steven begins to leave the tower. And Steven basically slowly walks back to Pallet Town. He makes it back to his house, up the stairs, and stops by his brother's bed. And Steven doesn't do anything. And the narrator realizes that he has control again, but he can't exactly... Well, he can't move Steven, and even though the narrator is terrified, they look at Steven's trainer card. Ugh, I'm bad at this. Sorry. And he sees that Steven is looking rather, for lack of a better term, scary, to say the least. And his name has changed to... Well, he's still Steven, but his name is just a bunch of characters that just make up the name Steven now. That's basically now what he's called. And the same is... And, yeah. So... the narrator tries to save the game, but it says that nothing can be saved now. So he goes to the pause menu, and much like Steven, there's characters that spell out the name Miki. And they have 4 options. They try status, which says that it's her, switch, never, close, and no, and the final option is strangle. And the narrator selects strangle, and Steven says goodbye, and there's a snap. The game then proceeds to shut itself off and turn itself back on, and the narrator turns it back on again. But the title screen has Steven and a rather horrible glitched Charizard. The narrator tries to hit continue, and it seems that they're taken to a zoom out view of Pallet Town, showing Steven's house to the west, with tall grass surrounding it. And yeah, that's... The story ends with this, though. It was as it had been when I first popped it in. A trainer and a Charizard. I attempted to hit continue. No. So yeah, that was Strangled Red. Now, once again, this is kind of one of my all-time favorites. Well, one of them at least, because I kind of like how meta this is. Like, I like how invested and in a way, emotionally attached the narrator gets becomes to Steven. Like, the narrator seems genuinely interested. Like, it seems like pure curiosity that's driving the player. And once he sees that he's watched Steven basically lose everything and basically go insane, it's, looking at it now, it's rather heartbreaking, to say the least. It is. And I like how this hacked Pokemon game is kind of like a prequel, a fan-made prequel to the original. Like how basically we get some information on like Red, and because like I said before, I like the idea of Steven being someone that Red looks up to. Like, Steven possibly was Red's inspiration to become a Pokemon master in the first place. I am so sorry about that, excuse me. I am so sorry. But yeah. I also like how kind of meta this game is. Like, how the narrator insists that Steven isn't their real name or anything, and that the character in the game just came with the name. So, yeah. This also kind of reminded me a bit about... I also get the feeling of... This also kind of reminded me of, like... Because grief plays a major role in the last part of the story. Like... Because... Well... We've all lost someone we loved. And yeah, and it's hard, but it also shows like how much grief can push someone. Like, will... Because I was kind of wondering, will Steven actually end up seeking help, or will he just let this consume him forever? Which, well, I don't know, I just feel like the less said about it, the better. What am I saying? Anywho, but yeah, it also reminded me a lot about Pet Sematary by Stephen King, which, you know, the idea of the ability to bring a loved one back from the dead, but they don't come back the way you remember. And yeah, and I also like the side note, I also like the addition of the missing no, which the missing no was actually kind of a phenomenon in the Pokemon community for a while. Which, it was basically like this glitched out L-shaped thing. Apparently at one point it was thought to be a Kangaskhan or something, but yeah, it's still just missing no to this day. As well, as far as I know, I honestly don't know what it is, to be honest. But yeah, like, I also like the addition of what the missing no can actually do. Like, it can bring Pokemon back from the dead, but sometimes dead is better. I don't know, I just got the feeling like the Pet Sematary, like it feeds on grief. like, basically, it also seems to have corrupted Steven. And I don't want to assume the worst, but I don't know if it's... Because there's still a bit of mystery to this game. Like, is this, with the missing no in his possession now, like, is this the point of no return for Steven? And if so, could it possibly be fixed and he can learn to cope? Or make it so that Miki never died in the first place? I don't know. To be honest, I really don't know. I don't have an answer. But, yeah. I also kind of like the... Well... This is kind of a bit of a mixed bag for me, because... Well, I like how, like, meta this story gets it sometimes. I kind of would like it better if it wasn't too ironic. But then again, it was... I don't know, I guess a part of me thought it was a bit of clever irony that it kind of starts out like all Pokemon games. Haunted Pokemon creepypastas. But, yeah, and... We also, later on, find out why this is called Strangled Red, even though people turn, well, you know, blue when they're strangled. But at the end, we find out exactly why it's called that. But... And also at the ending, there's also kind of a lot of questions. Like, well, of course, the obvious ones are, who made this game? Like, why did they make it? Or, like, is this version of Pokemon Red really haunted? Or is it just something that the creator of this hacked game did? Like, was it to vent? Was it for creativity, for creative sake? We'll never know. And also, like, because, I don't know, I always got the feeling that, and also, one other thing about the ending is that we don't know what actually happened to the boy's mother, or what happened to Steven afterwards, because... I don't know, it's actually kind of somewhat left ambiguous as to what happened to Steven. And also, I like the idea of, like, once they obtain Miki, they see that it's just a bunch of characters, and later on Steven, that make up both of their names, which in my opinion is actually kind of fitting with the missing no. Because, well, it's the missing no. So, I guess names would be glitched out as well, if that makes any sense. It probably doesn't, but then again, what do I know? So, yeah, if you're looking for an old classic pokepasta, I would recommend Strangled Red. And, yeah, that's kind of all I have for now. But I do hope you all enjoyed, and thank you all for watching, and make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye!